All right. Well, yes, what Aaron said in a nutshell, but also more than that, I have to just reiterate that the core initiative at our heart, Englewood Arts Collective, is a group of artists with deep roots to Englewood. We all grew up there and or still live there and or still work with many people, entities, members, community. We just have ties and love for our hood, Englewood. So to that point, this our Englewood.com, our EnglewoodMural.com website shows what's left in the aftermath and just a nice little memory space for it. So we have quotes from one of the volunteers. We have a little short video, which I'm going to play in a few seconds, a quick synopsis for anyone that wasn't listening intently to what Aaron just said. And yeah, it's just reiterating the intention behind all of this. We knew from the beginning that it wasn't just about a mural. We didn't want to create something for the community. It had to be with the community. And we're very, very proud that that is what happened. We held space for good. And thanks to not just us and the efforts of us to create the design of it, right, which is a collaboration of our strong muralists, the graphic designers on the team, as well as the photographers on the team. We all came together to put together a visual representation of us as an entity, but also utilizing words that were voted upon by members of the community. And we really linked up with Rage. We could not have done this without Rage going out, putting out their street team, getting analog votes from those of the Englewood residents that aren't so tech savvy, as well as the digital votes. It was a true collaborative effort, and I can't say, I can say a lot, but that's pretty much the gist of it. I'm going to click around a little bit, bear with me, and I'm going to jump to our participants page just to give a shout out to all of our participants that came out. We had volunteers from all over the city, but we had residents and locals to come out. We had Eric Hotchkiss. He represents not just the artist in residency, but he's made in Englewood. That's his entity. And he built this beautiful installation. We worked specifically with people who have ties in Englewood, like Brown Books and Paintbrushes, and they hooked us up with the books and the band, and we linked up with Stephanie Coleman's office, and Children's Home and Aid came out. And I mean, it went above and beyond. We held the space, and then everyone showed up and showed out and did what we do. And when I say we, I mean as a community and as people who are invested and who care. You know, we didn't necessarily micromanage all of the activities, but the fact that it ended up being a day with so many beautiful giveaways and so many beautiful just extras, it really just exemplified what happens when we all work together in the name of art. Um, I'm going to very quickly talk and quickly click through. This is what Eric created. And I mean, it speaks for itself, right? It's an ongoing, active art installation. We had the trunk and treats. We had a member of Rage volunteer and come out and create printmaking posters. This represents that the impact that art can have and continue to have. Art isn't just about murals. It can be many different facets and manifest in many different ways. And we worked with so many different groups. And when I say we held space for good, I'm talking about how we had yoga, how we had representations and activities that truly embodied a community and all the different ways in which we can be healthy and heal and just work together to create beauty in the visual sense, but also beauty in the metaphorical sense. So to that point, I'm gonna go back to the home page and stop talking and just play this lovely video. And then I'm gonna let some of the other EAC members speak.
So excited to be here in partnership with Englewood Arts Collective, Rage, and so many other wonderful organizations out here in the 16th floor, in the heart of the 16th floor. All right. Red Englewood girl came out to provide all of these beautiful books for the babies.
So I hope that was an indication of just the energy and love that was manifested on this day. Uh, if any other EAC members want to speak to anything, please take the stage because I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, I just want to say it was just awesome to interact with the neighbors and just see their response, and seeing this happen in the neighborhood. More specifically, the people that didn't know that it was happening, like it was like a breath of fresh air for them. And I mean, for me, just really a big moment to be able to share that with them, to give that to them, and just to see all the camaraderie with the different Englewood businesses and orgs all like working together. It was awesome.
I just want to say I just appreciate the opportunity to be involved. I think it was a wonderful opportunity looking back, knowing that I was raised maybe 2 blocks from the actual viaduct made a major impact on me. It was great seeing all of the resources being distributed and being located by the community residents, as well as a lot of the networking that was going on. So it was a beautiful day, a beautiful event, extremely peaceful, and everything worked out fine.
I'll quickly chime in just to say that I am in awe of this group of folks. I remain and will always be. And a little girl that grew up on 59th and Eggleston, to see this on 58th and Halsted is beyond amazing. And it's true what they say about when the community shows up. So.
Yeah. Anyone feel free to cut me off, but I know that time is of the essence. So I will just say, I implore any of you guys who want a little more additional info to scour the website. There's more than enough details there, and continue to show and support the creatives of Englewood. We do not represent all of them, but my hope is that we represent just the tip of the iceberg of the talent and the passion that exists and has always existed and will continue to exist and hopefully thrive with the support of the city and continued collaboration with the community. Hopefully this is the beginning of many more beautiful things to come. So yeah, thank you, thank you.
Great, thank you all. Aaron or Lydia, do you want to turn it over now to introduce Eric? Or did I lose Aaron?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, there you are.
I'll ask Lydia to chime in too if there's anything that she wants to add, but we have an opportunity to introduce you all to our first artist in residence for Englewood, Eric Hotchkiss, who Janelle mentioned is a local creative, founder of the Made in Englewood brand, and just a really tremendous asset to this community. And so we're really, really happy to be working alongside him in the next 2 years to work along alongside all of you to really develop some action plans in terms of cultural development in Englewood. Eric was heads and shoulders above the kind of the rest of the competition for this particular project, and was really happy that the members of the Englewood Arts Collective also helped to participate on the selection panel and select Eric. So this has been, again, a locally driven process. And so we're just really, really proud of the fact that we have so much rich talent in Englewood to kind of draw from, and really excited about what the opportunities for the future are. So Lydia, I don't know if you have anything to add. Other than that, we can hand it over to Eric when we're done.
No, that was perfect. Thanks, Erin. Just echoing the excitement to be working with Eric, the joy to see Eric's installation on Halloween at the Englewood Arts Collective Community Paint Day. And Eric, just invite you to take over the screen, and thanks so much for being here with us today.
I'm muted, I didn't see that. Hi everyone, I'm Eric Hotchkiss. I'm just gonna go through a bunch of pictures, and I'm gonna talk minimally about myself, and maybe if there are any questions, I could just answer that. So my name is Eric Hotchkiss. I'm a engineer, designer, educator. I teach at the School of Art Institute, and I teach in design objects, which is their version of industrial design. But more importantly, like I said, I am the co-founder of Made in Englewood, and I'll just talk a little bit about that and what I've been doing. So yeah, so it started in actually 2016. It started as an idea to have an exhibition of design work in the neighborhood, right? So me and my partner, we all make things, me and my partner, Andre Westhill, make things out of reclaimed wood, reclaimed materials, concrete, really cheap materials, just because we were broke at the time. And we thought, why don't we just, instead of exhibiting it somewhere else, exhibit it in our neighborhood. Then it went beyond that. Instead of exhibiting it, we put it outside in the Englewood Plaza. And we said that we'll teach anyone who came by how to make the stuff that we made, because it's made by anything anyone can get from the hardware store right there on 63rd and right off Morgan. So we did that, and actually we went past that. So we partnered with some people we jumped over to during this exhibition, we jumped over to the back to school parade with a truck and just did these things called scratch blocks, because I worked at School of Art Institute. So we knew we did this thing called an iron pour, so that if we allowed students to, or allowed young adults to engrave into it, we can produce these kind of iron works, something that I knew that we don't necessarily, around Englewood, we don't necessarily have access to, but I can shoehorn it in. Another example, this is this installation of Proud, which I want to give a shout out to everyone who helped me the night of. So long story is, this was a loud project that happened the day before the Englewood Arts Collective, because all my compressor broke out, it died. So it was a collective of people from 61st and May and 62nd and Troop who came through with hammers to help me nail all those pieces of wood in, because I really wanted to be a hardwood floor reminiscent of Skate World. It used to exist right there, right off 63rd and Racine. Also involved with the Love Fridge project. So building these Love Fridges, actually right there, we have Cujo right there, who painted the one that's existing right now in South Shore, but also a new one that's just being installed right on 63rd and Morgan. So my purpose is to not just be a designer, but to design things that are relative to the neighborhood that I grew up in and still live in. And also using my skills to kind of leverage my skills and do things I think are of significance in my neighborhood. So this Love Fridge project was an example of that. So it's a mutual aid project where it is the idea that food should be free and available to everyone. So these fridges exist all over Chicago, and it's my effort to put one that is going to be localized on 63rd and Morgan, and in partnership with the Getting Grown Collective, which is a partnership of, I'm just gonna call them farmers, but also mutual aid network in themselves that can stock and keep food in this refrigerator. And just doing other projects. I mean, I'm just going through examples of stuff, right? So I know there's a community of skaters here. So I did a project where we were making not just mobile skate park, but also teaching people how to make skateboards. We branded them Made in Englewood. Unfortunately, they all moved to the west side. And then actually they're 2/3 of them are living in California right now. So they've blown up as artists, as rappers, but they started right here in Englewood. Looking at like the makeup of the neighborhood, looking at those plywood boards that exist in our alleys, realizing those were all basketball rims. Was a project called The Most Beautifulest, where I make the basketball rims from scratch, even bending the metal. And the idea is that if you paint a basketball rim, I will give you the rim to put up for free. Again, skateboards, working with the Available Cities project, which is part of this 2021 architectural biannual. A lot of my work has also been in Englewood, but also in North Lindale. So through the Art Institute, but also through my own work, working with Audrey, who's an adult, but also young adults in North Lindale to do a lot of work. And also working with the Douglas 18 project, which is the miniature golf course that's being erected in Douglas Park, in unison and with the work of a lot of young adults who live in that community. So everything from the artwork that exists up and down 16th Street to the letting people know about the golf course, making these mobile golf holes that went from block club to block club, but also went actually downtown, right underneath the cultural center, space, this gallery called Space P11. So let everyone know what we are doing, but more importantly, let everyone know that it is being designed by the community. So again, big part of my work is not just being a designer, but being a designer in the community, working with community and leaning on the community, because a lot of these groups do a lot of dope stuff. A lot of people that work with me do all the work and I just put my name on it. So, so yeah. And also doing a lot of work all throughout the city in terms of like the activates that happen downtown. So we launched the first big outdoor drag show that happened right on Wabash, right off of Adams Street. Other work and wayfinding work in North Lindale, et cetera. So yeah, I'm out here making stuff and that's it.
So just
Can I jump in? I'm so sorry, but I just want to say Eric does more than just make stuff. And before anyone asks why is all his stuff all over the city and not in Englewood, this opportunity will enable him to bring all of his talents back home. His stuff is all over the city and it deserves to be where he lives. And that's my 2 cents and I'm gonna shut up now.
Can I say something? I feel like there's a misconception. My stuff is in Englewood. I just don't talk about it. My stuff is wild out here. Like all the Christmas trees are up around 61st Street. We're putting those out there now. This idea that someone said that, why don't we have Christmas trees in the hood? I was like, why not? I have a truck. I bought Christmas trees because they were real cheap around like October, end of November. We're putting them out there now. Now it's becoming like a metal project because those Christmas trees don't look as great, right? When you see all like the big influx of people with bikes, because all those kids come to my backyard and fix their bikes. Like I'm out here, I've been out here and I do stuff on a small scale, but yeah, I'm right here on 61st. You see me out here. You see, if you ask about me, you'll see my little crowded backyard where we make stuff every day, so.
So in the next couple of months, as Eric mentioned, this is a community project. So in the next 6 months to a year, we will just be engaging with local residents to come up with a project. So there will be lots of opportunities to chat with Eric and to engage in this process. So please stay tuned for those invitations. But thanks very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Janelle and EAC, and thanks, Aaron and Lydia for walking us through that. Some really great work that's already happened, and looking forward to what's to come from both of those groups. So let me bring my screen back up if I can. Great. So we're actually doing really well on time, which is unique for us. So thanks so much for DCase and the team for keeping us on time too. The meat of what we want to talk about today at the roundtable is the status of the Englewood Square RFP. As many of you know, those of you who have been involved with us from the beginning, this was a process where we went through visioning over the summer. The RFPs were released in August. We'll get to a little bit more detail on timeline, but we're now seeing responses come in to these RFPs. Developers they were excited by what was put forward in the RFP document, in the request for proposals, and they have responded to that request with some great proposals. And so we want to share those with you. It'll be a first look today, and then more details to come on that in the future for sure. So a quick reminder, what were these RFPs, these requests for proposals? It's a solicitation of interest in city-owned land. Our Invest Southwest RFPs are going, beyond what a traditional RFP normally does, where you just kind of list the details of the property, by showing that visioning and doing, some preliminary community engagement to give potential developers a taste of what the community is expecting. So neighborhood vision and goals were included, programmatic uses, what kind of design, what kind of urbanism, all of that was included in the RFP, and even a high level financial kind of review to understand what really is possible with city incentives. So a refresher on the timeline. Just a quick reminder, folks can just jump on mute if you're not actively speaking. So quick reminder on, jumping around here. Here you see the calendar, the overall timeline for the RFP. The RFPs were released, and again, the Englewood RFP was released at the same time as one in Austin and one in Auburn Gresham. So the first 3 Invest Southwest corridors to have RFPs released. That happened in August. We then saw 3 months essentially for folks to develop their responses. Here we are in December at the end of that 3 months, and we're now going into the evaluation stage, step 3. So DPD will be reviewing those with our sister agencies internally. We're going through, these are anywhere from 150 to 300 page responses. So a lot of information to get through, a lot of things to verify. We're doing that quickly. We expect to have that kind of wrapped up in January. So what we're doing today is bringing to you all a first look. Again, we received these responses 2 weeks ago, so this is an overview. Additional detailed input and presentation of these responses is going to be available. We'll touch on that in a bit, but later in January, we will have an opportunity to get into these a lot more. Sorry, click the right thing. There we go. So here you see how the release schedule for Englewood, Auburn, Gresham, and Austin kind of coincides with the other Invest Southwest corridors. And this is an expansion of that previous timeline that goes all the way out to construction. So here we see responses being developed, through the end of this year. We've now received those. Our evaluation will kind of go into early next year. Once a final respondent is selected, we then go into kind of a negotiation and legislative process phase, right? And so that gets us to kind of a redevelopment agreement with that group. So that we anticipate being anywhere from 6 to 9 months, and then construction can begin. And construction on any of these projects would take anywhere from probably 12 to 18 months, give or take. So you can see that, the pace we're on is for something for groundbreaking essentially, and actually a completion, I should say, in somewhere in 2023, depending on the project, depending on the process. But this is, again, part of a larger effort. The sites for the development, and many of you remember this from before, the sites were broken up into multiple packages. I won't belabor this point except to say we've received 3 responses for the firehouse site, which is package B1 with the additional package B2, the center of Englewood Square. Again, just to orient folks, here we are at Halsted and 63rd, just north of the Whole Foods. So kind of behind the Whole Foods, if you will. The historic firehouse site was one package that we put in the RFP and asked developers to respond to. We received 3 responses on that site. We also received 1 response for what we're calling package C, you see in blue here, which has a frontage on 63rd Street. Package A, we are reserving for a future potential RFP or development. So what did we ask for in the RFP? We asked for revitalization of the firehouse. If that site were selected, we said, if you're going to select that site, we want to see a revitalization of the firehouse, uses to include a menu of potential items, community uses, culinary, tech uses, restaurants, we wanted to see this space activated. And as you can see here, we wanted to see it activated with the town square, an open space that really kind of gave credence to that great historic building. On the 63rd Street site, we asked for a mixed use building. And again, many of you will remember this, having come from the visioning over the course of the summer, that given the proximity to the Halsted Green Line station, and given the importance of adding residential along this corridor to help activate the area, kind of a more 24/7, if you will, activation, so that folks who reside in these units can then support not only potential new ground floor retail, but existing retail at Englewood Square Phase 1, the Whole Foods shopping center, and retail and other services all along 63rd that may be coming.
Turn off the show.
So again, a review of what was in the RFP. These are the kind of images that we included to spur creation of ideas from the developers. So we knew at Phase 1 on the left, our financial limitations for incentives would limit us to either one of these two sites, either some sort of building along 63rd, a mixed use building, or activation of the firehouse, which may have some additional new construction around it. And then long term, we see additional opportunities for open space and development across the entirety of Englewood Square Phase 2. We're not at a stage where we can tackle that yet, but we want to make sure we're thinking about that future. So what's been our evaluation process to date? Where are we? As I mentioned, DPD and our sister agencies are currently reviewing submissions. We anticipate that extending into January. Today, we'll be doing a high-level overview of the submissions we received. And we'd like to get some feedback from you all, but we do want to make sure that we recognize what you see in point 3, which is that we'll be coming back in January with the actual development teams. So as I mentioned, we received 4 responses. So we would expect those teams to come back and present to you all themselves. And we'll, of course, we'll talk about this in a bit, but we'll create a method for them to do that in a very standard way so you can kind of compare apples to apples. But we do want in-depth discussion with you all about what these proposals are, and we want you to have that opportunity to discuss directly with the folks proposing and ask questions of them. So that will be coming in January, as you see here, probably in 2 sessions to give enough time to discuss. I don't think we could cover all 4 in just 1 session. At that point, once we've had a conversation with you all, once we've finished our internal review, we've made sure that we understand their finances, we understand what exactly they're proposing, and we've gotten your all's feedback, we can then move on to a winning selection. It may be the case that we engage with more than one group at first, especially if the feedback we get from you all in January pushes us towards any tweaks, right? Folks may say, I really liked number 2, but I wish the building weren't as tall or something like that. Those are the things we can go back to the developer and have a conversation about. And so we may be in a position to have that conversation with more than one developer and eventually get to a finalist. That finalist selected in February would then continue to negotiate with DPD and to engage with you all, engage with the broader community before we get to an actual redevelopment agreement. So what will feedback look like? What does January look like when we ask folks to come back and present to you? How do we engage with the roundtable and with the public? We see 3 kind of main methods of doing that. Qualitative prompts, where we can ask very targeted questions. We can get very targeted feedback from you all on what do you think about this group's experience? They're going to present previous projects that they've worked on, both the development team, previous developments that they've been a part of, and the design team, previous projects that they've designed for other developers. We want to get your thoughts on their experience. What about the program? What kind of uses are they proposing? Do you have any thoughts? Do you have things that you'd like to see that they're not thinking of, or any issues with what they are proposing? The design, are there things you like, you don't like? We want to have very specific ways of gauging your feedback on that. Partnerships, we've asked folks to put together community partnerships. Some have done that in a very kind of embedded way, where community partners may be part of the proposing team. Some maybe aren't there yet, and so we want your feedback on that. And then phasing, again, these are just ideas, but talking about how these projects actually roll out. We also have played with a way of using live polling. We've used a website called Menti, which lets folks log in and actually enter anonymously their thoughts. You know, do you like option 1 or 2? Do you like, within option 1, do you prefer their alternative 1 or their alternative 2? All of those things we can start testing and seeing in real time how folks feel and what the consensus in the room is. And then, of course, open Q&A. We want to provide an opportunity for folks to ask questions to the development team and think of things that we maybe haven't thought of ourselves. On the back end, what we're doing, text-heavy slide, I know, but this is the litany of items that DPD and our sister agencies are reviewing. This was in the RFP. This is what we told developers that they will be judged on. And this is what we're currently reviewing. Again, we're only 2 weeks in, and we had Thanksgiving in the middle of that, but we are in the process of working through this. So the 3 kind of headers that we're looking at are promotion of short-term and long-term community wealth building. And you can see here that the litany, creative partnership with community organizations or with, you know, a smaller minority-led development team. How do they partner potentially with, you know, if somebody doesn't have a ton of experience, how do they partner with folks who do in a way that meaningfully builds community wealth? Commitment to equity on past projects and evidenced in this project. South and West Side development experience. How are they collaborating with community organizations? How does the project impact economic development, both in this site in particular and more broadly in the community? What about local and small business support? How does the proposal do that? And then minority-owned business and women-owned business and local hiring standards. The city has standards that developers need to meet, so we make sure that they're meeting them. Professional and technical competence, number 2, we're looking for the proposals to be complete and responsive. Did they actually read the RFP and list things that were stated in there? What kind of experience do these teams have on prior projects? What's the quality of the concept in terms of design, in terms of program? How innovative are they being? Are they thinking of new ways of incorporating, you know, tenants in an interesting way? Do they have interesting sustainability technology or things like that? Their commitment to design excellence. That I think we've touched on it before in these roundtables, but that is very much a priority of DPD and the city more broadly, is to make sure that, especially in West Southwest, on the South and West Side, when we see new development coming, that it is of the highest design quality. And so we are holding teams to that, and then an understanding of their schedule. And then finally, economic feasibility. So our economic development team is reviewing, you know, all of the numbers behind these developments, making sure that, you know, funding has been secured or interested funders are part of the program, that the qualifications are there, and to understand what kind of public assistance is requested and how much equity the developer themselves are putting in the proposal. So it's not just purely public dollars going to it. So this is what we're reviewing. So I want to take a pause here. We've got a lot more to go through in terms of the actual responses, but I do just want to open it up to the group. That's a lot that we just went through. Is there anything else as we go into January? I'm curious to hear thoughts on things I haven't mentioned that you definitely want to see the development teams bring to the table and explain. So they'll explain the design, they'll explain the uses, they'll explain, you know, to some extent, they'll explain the financials. Some of that is, of course, confidential, but, you know, they can say, we're asking for X million in TIF dollars, or we're asking for NOF funds, or whatever it is that we expect them to come and talk about those things. So I know one comment that had come up in a previous discussion was legal actions. And that is something we asked in the RFP. Have you or your team been part of any legal actions in the last several years? So we want to cover that. We want to make sure that folks touch on that in their presentations. I'll pause here. I'll open it up. Anyone has any thoughts right now? And of course, if there's thoughts later, we can always add them, but just curious if folks have thoughts of what possibly to add. And I'll open the chat as well here. So I'll type things right in from the chat, but if folks want to jump in verbally, please feel free to do so. I see somebody, Aisha, thank you, has said, make sure the economic development of the community or economic impact on community is critical. So yes, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, that's fine. By all means, please add it to the chat if there's anything as you think about it, and we will take that from the chat and we will add it to what we bring back in January. But we do want to make sure that this group has the information they need from these development teams to make a meaningful kind of judgment of these proposals. So with that, I'll just jump right into it. Here are the RFP submission summaries, the 4 that we received. Again, we received 3 for the Firehouse site. That's the site just north of Whole Foods, and 1 for the 63rd Street site, which is the site just west of Whole Foods and the shopping center. We're going to do a high-level review of these proposals, including the development and design team, the program, what kind of uses they're talking about, and an overview of the design. Much deeper dive available in January. I do want to touch on one item. We had asked teams to strongly consider, and we told them this would be part of their assessment, how they engage with community organizations. Some of the respondents very clearly indicated that they may have a community organization interested as a tenant, let's say, and they may have a letter of support from that community organization. Others clearly had done some level of outreach, had maybe talked to groups, but hadn't necessarily gotten them in on the ground floor, or hadn't necessarily had detailed conversations with those groups. With that in mind, we're just not even going to touch on community partnerships at this stage. We know there may be some folks on this call who were part of the proposals. As a community organization, as kind of somebody outside of the development team, you won't see your organization listed today. That doesn't mean we haven't acknowledged it in the document. We're tracking that separately, but just due to the sensitivity of not wanting to indicate that partnerships exist where they may still be forming, we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves here. So just a quick note on that. Again, more details on that in January for sure. So the first project entitled Englewood Connect, and I parenthesize here McLaurin, that's the development team. There's actually 2 proposals called Englewood Connect. So it's a bit confusing as we talk about it, but the proposal team for this Englewood Connect, which is one of the Firehouse site proposals, is McLaurin Development with partnership from Farpoint Development. The design team you see here, all those MBEs and WBEs, again, those are minority-owned business designation or women-owned business designation. You see here the lead architect, SOM, is a major international architecture firm based here in Chicago. And they've actually already made some forays into setting up a construction team as well. If I continue here, we can start seeing some more images. So what are they proposing? What is this team proposing? They're proposing a multi-phase project, which would include a culinary center and event space in the Firehouse that includes an addition. So it's a renovation and addition of the Firehouse. You can see that here in the kind of center of the screen. They're also talking about a business incubator. So that would be, from what we can tell of their proposal, this might be, in their mind, a kind of shipping container structure, something flexible, something semi-open air that allows small spaces for folks who are just starting up their new small businesses. Adjacent to that, you see hoop houses. So some indication of support for urban agriculture on site. And then you also see the other kind of main program elements here would be what they're entitling the Englewood Living Room, which is a large, and we'll see more images of this, but a large kind of open air operable sort of structure, something that can close up in the winter, open up in the nicer months, that allows for a space for a cafe, spaces to gather, maybe performance space. And that is tied into what is a future phase element, the shed, as they're calling it. This would be a similar kind of structure, but would house more co-working or food hall type spaces. So, and we'll see images of that in a couple of slides here, but here you see a plan of the site. So again, just to orient ourselves, Whole Foods is on the bottom left, north is north, so Halstead is on the right here. This is the WIC building to the right of our site. So you see here the Firehouse, which they've added an expansion to for a ballroom. So culinary center that supports culinary startups and small businesses on that front, but also expands into an event space. And then you see on the right this combined Englewood living room and shed, which provides space for cafe, performance, and seating areas, study spaces or kind of hangout spaces, and then co-working, conferencing, desks for folks who want to use that option, and then food stalls. I believe in their proposal, they also talked about the possibility of food truck stalls within the site as well. But you see here a large central plaza space in the middle. And then we can just show some images. Here's that Englewood living room. So we're essentially standing in front of the firehouse, looking towards the intersection of 63rd and Halsted. You can see the large space with the cafe and the seating area. You see the business incubator to the right, and the large plaza in the middle. Here's the interior of that Englewood living room, the tiered seating, the movable seating, and the cafe, and then the shed to the north of that, which again is kind of a commons. And you see here, co-working spaces for kind of a food hall, and looking back to the renovated firehouse. So I'm going to just keep moving through all of these. Please, if you have comments, jot them down real quick, and we can, when we get through all 4 of these, we can take some questions and get some thoughts from folks. The next proposal is called Imagine Englewood. This is also a joint venture from Imagine Group and Eastlake Management and Development. Their design team, a little bit smaller, but led by a minority-owned architecture firm, JGMA, in partnership with Beehive. Again, a construction team has started to be identified as well to provide some additional information. Not a dissimilar program proposed for the firehouse, a culinary incubator in this case. In this case, it's proposed to house headquarters for small Southside-owned businesses, AYO Foods, Wakana, potentially a ghost kitchen. For those of you unfamiliar with that term, we see that pop up a lot, where it's a kitchen that's used to prepare delivery order food, maybe from multiple different purveyors. So rather than an individual restaurant cooking all of its delivery food, this ghost kitchen could actually take contracts from many different restaurants and produce many different foods to then be delivered. So that's kind of what they're proposing for the renovation of the firehouse. This development team, Eastlake Management, actually owns the WIC building, and so they've kind of added that into their proposal. It's something, frankly, the other teams really kind of weren't in the position to do, but this team was. So they've thrown that in there with the potential to wrap the north and northwest face of the WIC building with retail. We'll see what that might look like, but that, in their mind, kind of helps activate the plaza that they formed here. So here you see, in between the firehouse and the WIC building would be a multifamily residential development. This would be a 40-unit development, affordable, all affordable. And we can talk in a moment about the affordability portion of residential. We can talk about that at the end, because it applies to another proposal as well. But they are proposing a 40-unit affordable multifamily residential development, which helps frame this plaza that they show facing Emerald Drive. They are also showing a townhouse style development, again, affordable residential. In between the two, a community garden. In fact, when I zoom into that, we can see a potential for a garden in between. I will say, I think the way that the landscape is drawn in this image is pretty gestural, if that makes sense. I would imagine the community garden would look significantly different from this. So they're leaving a lot to our imagination, I think, in terms of the look of the landscape, but just so we know that. They're also talking about a future community center. They don't have a ton of detail in the proposal at this time, and they can expand on that in January, but they're citing it for the future. They know that's a potential use. It's not part of the base proposal that they're pitching. Here you can kind of see in 3D what that might look like, the heights of those buildings, the kind of overall massing, and what that architecture might look like. And I'll say this group is really pushing the architectural envelope a bit, and they have some other tweaks to this, but they are showing, again, this multifamily residential in the center with kind of active ground floor. They're showing an activation of the back, essentially, of the WIC building, which would now not be a back anymore. It would kind of be another front of the WIC building. And then you see here the firehouse as well.
Hello, Lou.
Oh, yes.
This is Gloria.
Hi, Gloria.
everything looks good from what you're explaining, but I have a objection. With East Lake, is they the one going to be doing the hot housing complex development?
So
Or are they submitting a proposal? Because I'm against them. I'm just, because they not a good developer. They use cheap material. They not going to follow through on the plan. Because I worked for East Lake before. So I know all about the dirt, what they do when it comes down to their development. So I object to them doing any kind of development in that area over there, especially housing.
Okay, well, Gloria, thank you.
That's just me. I can tell you some stuff. I just hope, that's just me. I'm against East Lake.
Sorry, go ahead, Alderwoman.
Amen. Agree. They slumlord. She's absolutely right.
Yes.
And I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I just want to say, while y'all got these RFPs, is this what the community asked for? Because I want to know if these are what the community asked for, or was this RFP put out and people are just giving you their plan? Because this is not gonna work. The community is not gonna support this if this is not what people asked for. And maybe I missed the meeting where the roundtable said this. And if you're asking me for my $10 for this project, and I think I'm gonna speak for Alderman Lopez, you just showing this to us. We never got this, we never saw it. And so this is, we can't keep doing this. And how are we moving forward without a project manager? That's it. I'm gonna be quiet. I'm not.
Okay, no, let me address Gloria and Alderman, let me address a couple of those things. So Gloria, your point definitely taken. Thank you for that comment. I think that is exactly the kind of feedback we want to be getting on these. I think, again, once the teams have had a chance to present to the group, we want to take all that kind of feedback on. And we talked about earlier, experience. But many of you may have experience with these developers, maybe with some of these designers. We want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly on that. And so appreciate that. I don't think we're at a place yet to take that on, but this is a proposal that involves East Lake, and so issues or concerns folks have with that.
So when it comes down to the housing part, I deal with affordable housing, mixed income, CHA. I can tell you the ins and outs about a whole lot of stuff, but definitely, my advice is not to get East Lake involved in anything. It's all about money with them, and they can care less about the tenants. They can care less about anything. It's just about them getting money.
Point of information, if I can.
Sure.
This Alderman Moore, and that's I do respect the young lady's opinion, but other people have varying opinions about East Lake. Maybe if that was one of your experiences, I understand. I worked as a development manager at the Chicago Housing Authority. I worked on several projects with East Lake management, and East Lake has always produced a good product. And
no, they don't, David.
I said they've always produced a good product for me. And so I wouldn't say nobody is perfect, but I wouldn't go on just the record to saying that this Black-owned company, who is one of the leading developers in this city, is not worth an opportunity. And
no,
so
he's not. No, he's not. Because you ain't getting to none of his development, all his other housing complex, how raggedy they are. I'm gonna leave that one alone. Let me shut up.
I respect your opinion, but that's where the alderman will get involved and and make sure she hold any developer to the high standards that they need to be held to. Because I can point out probably bad things on any developer, but it's up to the alderman and the community especially to be involved to hold that developer to the standard in which the community requires.
Great, thank you, Alderman, and Gloria. Again, thank you for your thoughts on that. We're taking all this in, so we know folks have positive and maybe negative experiences with different members of these teams, and we want to assess that throughout.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alderman.
If I did, I wouldn't be able to drive.
I think Alderman Sawyer.
Mute yourself, Sawyer, if you're talking to somebody else.
But if I may interject real
jump in.
quickly, as Alderman Moore and Alderman Taylor, I think Alderman Sawyer will chime in that any development that comes in our prospective wards, we expect excellence. There is a development happening just a couple of blocks, Ms. Williams, and that developer has had to change the entire look of that building. A Black developer, as a matter of fact, we're getting our first rooftop in the 16th ward because of the level of excellence that I expect. And we have to hold those accountable. So I thank you for your feedback. I do not know. I don't believe that Eastlake management is currently in the 16th ward right now, but most certainly if they are selected out of the 4 once Luke presents, I know that we will have great partners like yourself, but more specifically in the 16th ward, and my colleagues will definitely be holding those accountable.
I believe they own the WIC building.
Oh, that's right. He does own the WIC building. But in terms of housing, there isn't any housing in the ward, which makes them unique, a unique candidate, because the WIC building is, let's just quite frankly admit it, it's an eyesore on Halsted right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alderman, and thank you, everyone, for the thoughts on that. I do want to address Alderwoman Taylor's note. And I see actually in the chat, Aisha has raised a similar kind of connected question. The visioning sessions, remember there were a few of those. The need for housing, or the desire for housing here, came out of previous plans for the area. The past quality of life plans had shown housing in this area. And to be honest, DPD has always been excited about that aspect of development in Englewood Square Phase 2. The need for mixed use development to include both an expansion of commercial and community and service uses, while also providing housing, has been critical to what we've seen, as the future of this development. Again, the reason for that housing, there are several reasons, right? There's the need to just create additional new units, new high quality units in the area. And then also the benefits that housing provides as it relates to transit. Locating housing this close to transit is always something that DPD and the city is trying to do to provide access to jobs and other services. And so housing in this area, and also to the retail, the proposed retail, the existing retail, the potential retail that may happen on the corridor. So the inclusion of any housing of any kind was definitely brought up in those visioning sessions, and we heard from folks that was something they were interested in as well. Alderwoman Taylor, to your broader point, is this what the community was asking for in the visioning sessions? What we heard loud and clear in the visioning sessions were a desire to revitalize the firehouse. We heard that the potential uses, we heard a litany of items, but we heard anything ranging from support of small businesses to tech entrepreneurs to culinary and kind of urban agriculture support. So we heard a wide, the restaurants and fine dining, we heard a wide range of potential uses for the firehouse specifically. And the fact that, on the firehouse site, solely renovating the firehouse is not probably enough to support development there. That additional square footage of commercial or service or community development might be needed. We'll see in a moment what's being proposed at 63rd. We've kind of flashed up on the screen what we had shown in the RFP for that. Again, the idea that there would be active ground floor retail or neighborhood services along 63rd with residential above. So we're confident that what's being proposed, again, not in terms of design style, not in terms of the look and feel, that we can have conversations about in the wide range of looks and feels that have been proposed. But I will say that in terms of proposed uses, we do see quite a bit of alignment with what was included in the RFP. And we do feel confident that the RFP reflected the menu of options that had come out of the visioning sessions. Again, there was no real single consensus of this is what the firehouse should be, or this is how many units of housing we want. So we put in a kind of a range in the RFP, which we thought captured most of what came out of that visioning. And we do think that this, again, a lot of these proposals are, you'll see, very different from one another. And so Some capture it better, some do things we hadn't thought of, some maybe don't capture it as well. And so that's, by all means, you know, the level to which these actually meet the vision and goals of this roundtable and the community more broadly is part of our assessment for sure. So we do appreciate that.
Luke, this is Alderman Lopez, may I ask a question?
Sure, of course. Thank you, Alderman.
You mentioned that there was a lack of consensus. How many RFPs did you receive? I'm sorry.
4 total.
4 total. So this is the second or third RFP we're looking at?
Yeah, this is the second proposal, yes.
Okay. I've been to a number of those vision meetings, sat down with many of my colleagues here and a number of our community partners, and I don't remember an emphasis on housing the way it seems to be so far. And I think what worries me is that lack of consensus you're alluding to is kind of giving you guys, is opening the door for a free-for-all for this Englewood and West Southwest in terms of what you guys want to try and put here. My question is, I don't remember, as Alderman Taylor said, the emphasis leading to what we're seeing right now. But will there be time, if the community does not like any of these RFPs, to readjust, or are they going to only be solely focused on these 4 that are provided?
Those, no, good points and good questions. Thank you, Alderman.
And one other question too. Since we're talking about 63rd and Halsted, do these RFPs all take into account the TOD since 63rd and Halsted with the green line there?
Yeah.
Are they all within like TOD area for that station?
Yes, yeah. So I'll tackle those in reverse order. Yes, these would all qualify for the TOD benefits that any development in this area would qualify for. The extent to which these proposals are taking advantage of those benefits, I don't think I have a clear answer on that yet. We're still assessing that, but we would definitely push for that to happen. I think in terms of that, the housing component, when we talk about there not being consensus, I don't want to misconstrue what we feel was the summary of those visioning sessions, which included housing being shown on multiple of these sites, and that being met with kind of positive remarks from those visioning sessions. Now, what I will say, we're starting with the firehouse site here. The RFP did show housing on that firehouse site, but only one of the 3 proposals for this site shows housing. So it may be the case that folks feel more strongly that the firehouse area is not appropriate for housing. And there are 2 RFP responses that kind of touch on that. So I think we could easily see us going in that direction because of that. But I do think that housing in Englewood Square Phase 2 was always included in the visioning, generally more on, not to use all of our alphabet here, but sites B or sites C and A, the 63rd Street and Halsted Street sites. We felt pretty strongly that housing made sense in those areas in a mixed use format. Your final point on whether these 4 are the end all be all, I'll say that these are starting points, right? These 4 are starting points. And so it may be that one of these meets 60% of what we want to see as a group, as a community. And we can then push to have negotiations to turn that into 100%. If it comes down to none of the 4 are really exciting anyone, there's nothing really salvageable as far as this group, I don't think that will be the case, especially when these teams have a chance to fully dive into what they're proposing. But if that becomes the case, we'll take it from there. I don't think we're painted into a corner on that front at all.
Okay.
Hey, hi, Luke. Excuse me.
Hi, Eddie. Yeah.
Quick question. Eddie from Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. I'm kind of curious, like everybody been stating in the last segment, in regards to who was at the table. I represent Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, and we provide housing. We're the leading housing provider in Englewood and one of the leading housing providers in the city of Chicago. We have yet to participate in anything outside the roundtable when the discussion comes up around housing. So I'm kind of curious where the visioning session is taking place, what community engagement is taking place, because in regards to Antioch, we provide a variety of all housing, affordable housing, senior housing, and we actually have vacant lots near that location. And we would love to be included because we also have people that's looking for additional housing. So I'm just curious, like our elected officials have said here, and some of the other residents, Gloria Williams, we're just curious where DPD is getting this information from, because this is not some of the response from the community stakeholders and from the residents of Englewood.
No, Eddie, thanks for the question. So again, just a recap, the engagement that took place prior to the RP going out included the roundtables themselves. So I'm gonna probably misstate the months that we actually held those sessions, but I think the June and July roundtables were focused on visioning for this, as was a kind of mid cadence, if you will. I think, 2 weeks after one roundtable and 2 weeks before the other, we announced at the roundtable and sent the invite out to the roundtable group for kind of a one-off visioning session. We knew we'd need another session than just the roundtable. So there haven't been any kind of off calendar, if you will, sessions. It has been roundtable focused with that additional visioning session that, again, the invite went out to the roundtable, and we had many participants from this roundtable. I don't want to cut off the comments because we're getting great questions and comments from folks. I'm looking at the time. I do want to just get through the rest of these proposals quickly, and happy to take additional questions at the end of that. So again, as I mentioned, 2 Englewood Connect named proposals that have come through. This one from a combined team of Ignite Technology and DL3 Realty. We'll see DL3 again in a second. In this case, they are serving solely as a consultant, a development consultant. So they're not involved in the ownership of the project, but would be bringing their development experience to bear. We see the design team here, and again, the pre-construction team in this case. Consultants that they've brought on who do construction, but in this case, I believe are just providing estimates. So this proposal, this is another one that does not include housing. So again, the first one you'll remember, Englewood Connect the first Englewood Connect did not include housing. Imagine Englewood did include housing, and Englewood Connect #2 here, Ignite, also at this moment does not include housing. What we see is the renovation of the firehouse as a coffee shop and food hall on the first floor, and an entrepreneurial hub co-working space on the second floor. This, I think, is pretty close to what we had seen in some past proposals for the firehouse. So this that's what they're proposing for the firehouse. The open space here is organized as what they're calling an arts walk. It's a plaza. We've got more images of it, but opportunities for public art to be celebrated within that. And then what's being titled Englewood Accelerate, which is a kind of business incubator. Again, we'll see in a moment, they're proposing for the early stages that be a kind of shipping container related proposal. We'll dive into this a little bit more, just again to zoom in, give folks an understanding. Parking proposed on the outsides of the site here between the accelerator and the WIC, and here just kind of west of the firehouse. Some images of what's being proposed in the interior of the firehouse. As you may or may not know, the interior of the firehouse is it's not the worst shaped building in the city, but it's not great at this moment. There's a lot of kind of remediation work that would need to be done to the firehouse. So we were happy to see some visualization of the interior, which I don't believe we got that from the other group. So it was nice to see some thoughts about how this might lay out. Again, a coffee shop and food hall area, and the upper floors, co-working and entrepreneurial support. And then this, again, looking across the site at a business incubator. I'll be honest, and many of you may think this as well, that's a lot of gray. I think this is kind of a sketch image, if you will. I think that there's, the idea here, strong idea with, business incubator, but the final look of it, I imagine there are many comments that folks would have. But here we start to see what that landscape in between that might look like. And so this is part of the proposal, is to include significant landscape intervention, different kinds of areas, seating areas, lawn areas, and potential potential to kind of extend this open space in front of the Whole Foods, which was an interesting take as well. So we see some images of that. This looks like the same image, but you might notice the shipping container area now is a larger footprint. They're also proposing the potential for a future kind of phase 2. So as the market and financial incentives are available, perhaps that shipping container business incubator idea could evolve. And they're proposing one of two kinds of evolutions, either a 2-story office building. So, you know, potentially the folks who occupy those shipping containers get to a point where they're ready for more square footage, and the financial incentives and the market is there to actually create an office building, or a mixed use building. The ground floor may be office, maybe retail, and housing on the upper floors. Again, this is not really part of their proposal. It's them putting out ideas for the future. So things for us to think about as well. What I will say is this team is, no pun intended, connected to the 4th team, which we'll talk about in a moment. This is an overall master plan for all 3 sites that this combined team has put forward. We absolutely can talk about this more, and in January when folks present for themselves, we can definitely, you know, have some questions and think about this. This is a future vision, and by selecting this group, we're not necessarily signing on for this exact vision, but it's something to think about, and it is helpful, I think, for a team to have provided ideas, again, building on what was included in the RFP, providing ideas for what they might see as kind of full build out, which again, doesn't mean that they would be the developer to do that full build out, but nice to see, or here you can see at least what they were thinking maybe for an overall plan. So with that, I'll go to the 4th and final. This is Avia Park. This is the other site. This is the 63rd Street site. DL3 here is playing a more leadership role. It's a joint venture with Mercy Housing. They are proposing, here you can see their design team. So what's being proposed on this site is, what you see in this image is actually 2 phases. Phase 1 is the building on the right, which is facing 63rd. It's a 7-story mixed-use residential building, ground floor retail with 6 floors of residential above. It would be 100% deed restricted affordable, and we can talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but that's the proposal for that building. The phase 2 building would complete the L shape here. That would be additional units, affordability TBD. That could be built at a point when maybe the Englewood market supports market rate units, or a more vibrant mix of those kinds of units. And you see as well kind of an open space to the north. So I'll show quickly, this is what they're thinking for phase 1, the first building, parking behind, and some sort of temporary landscape treatment, to then eventually evolve into this fuller building, which would also include a childcare facility in the ground floor of the 2nd phase, and then expanded landscape. And some images of what that might look like. Again, active ground floor, they're showing kind of pockets of opening on that building where, places for folks to kind of gather outdoors, but on upper levels. And so just some images of what they've proposed there. And here, looking back, it's kind of seeing the landscape and the courtyard area and the playground proposed in the landscape area. And again, a reminder, this is part of that overall master plan vision that is kind of partnered with Englewood Connect by Ignite. So I'll pause there before Alderwoman Taylor, you had mentioned something about the corridor manager. We'll touch on that here. Just wanted to give any minute for last comments here. Again, a lot more information to come from the folks in January. Much deeper dive on each of these. We're anticipating probably something around 30 minutes of presentation on each of these from the developers, followed by approximately 30 minutes of active Q&A and discussion. And so we think it's an important decision. It's an important discussion that we have. And so we want to give you all time to actually interact with those folks in January. So a lot of details not able to get into here due to time. We'll take on more in January. I also think, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it wouldn't be a bad idea, maybe in the future session, to just refresh folks' memory on what came out of those visioning sessions. We've shared those presentations before, and I'll talk a little bit about presentation sharing in a second. anyway, it sounds like that's what I'm hearing the most of, is confirming that we have what was involved in the visioning is reflected in these RFPs. That's what we definitely want to hear. And obviously more detail about what's actually being proposed will come in January. But with that, I'll pause for a second, see if there's any questions or comments from folks.
Can I ask the questions being a newcomer here?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
How much have these documents been shared with the people on this call? And if not, how much of it can be shared? And second question to tag on is, given it looking like between like 30 and 70% of this is kind of like social space, has it reached the point of, has anyone reached the point of talking about programming in these RFPs?
No, great questions, Eric. So the RFPs themselves at this point are confidential. The documents themselves, they contain a lot of sensitive, confidential financial information about these firms. So the responses are not available to be shared. However, the January sessions, we anticipate pretty significant sharing of what's in them from those development teams. So again, these came in the door 2 weeks ago. This is everyone's first look on this call at what has come in the door. And we know it's prompted a lot more questions. And so we hope the January session will answer those questions.
Yeah. And will that be shared before, like when the documents be shared before the meeting? Because it's kind of hard to look at architectural drawings on the screen today.
Yeah, that's a good question. For sure, this deck will be shared after this call. So everybody can have a chance to, we know it's a lot to digest in just.
Or I mean, I guess the further, like the exploration of it, like the more information we'll have in January, will that be shared before?
That's a good question. That's a good point. I think we'll definitely note that if we can get those development teams to share their decks ahead of time, it may be helpful to get that in front of folks so you all have a chance to start to digest it before it's presented. That's a good point. To your point about programming, short answer is no. I mean, some proposals have done a better job of indicating what that programming might be, but I think it's really early days to be for them to have kind of nailed any of that down. And I think that's something we would continue to engage on, even after selecting one of the partners. We would continue to work not only with you and the folks on this call, but with others in the city as well. But thank you for the question. Okay, well, if there are any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. We do take those questions and try to respond back to folks afterwards if we don't have time on the call. I do want to, I know Alderwoman Taylor, you mentioned this specifically, we do want to touch on the corridor manager process and give folks an update. Jim, I'm not sure if you want to jump in and give folks an update on where we stand.
Sure. Yeah, so, Englewood, as most of you guys know on the call, has not selected a corridor manager yet. And just to circle back for a second, we got two strong responses from the Englewood Chamber of Commerce and from the Greater Englewood CDC. Both applicants scored well. They presented, their opportunities and challenges to both the city and to LISC, but we will be still holding off before we select a corridor manager. And part of that reasoning is we need to have some more internal conversations to deal with some sensitive issues about that selection process. It is something that is internal with the city. We hope that we are going to land before the first quarter of 2021. But in the meantime, Alderman Coleman, through our leadership, has provided the 16th Ward Development Advisory Council to assist with the process of, conducting the roundtables and helping us go through the RFP process. So we're going to lean into the expertise that's on this call, and certainly the expertise that is with the 16th Ward Development Advisory Council, and really work toward solving and resolving whatever issues are still lingering, particularly with the city in terms of the selection process, so we can have a corridor manager before the first quarter of the year. And happy to take any questions anybody may have.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you, Jim. And again, if folks do have questions, feel free to jump in the chat or raise your hand or just jump in. that kind of covers what we wanted to touch on for the bulk of it. Two kind of semi-major items that address previous comments from folks on the roundtable. Agendas. As you can imagine, we are information moves quickly sometimes in the city and sometimes moves slowly, but we're always trying to get those agendas to you as soon as possible. Starting in 2021, we are going to work to set those agendas with you all basically by quarter, so that at the January session, we can discuss what will be shared in February and March, and then we can do that prior to each quarter moving forward, just to give you all a better idea of what's coming down the pike. Of course, things may change and we may get new information that shifts things, but we do appreciate that folks want that surety ahead of time. We've had some initial discussions, and I think, again, at a future session, we will carve out time to actually have these kinds of conversations with you all as well. But obviously, continued RFP engagement is going to be something that will come up at future roundtables. Streetscape and vacant lot activation and interventions. That's something we've started having conversations about, and we know folks are interested in seeing that happen. So that's something else we can bring to the roundtable. Public safety, it's come up as a comment from folks, and we know that the mayor's office is actively working on some initiatives on that front. So we'd love to share that with you all and get your thoughts. Ongoing community-led projects. So we know that many of you are working on things right now. And so we want to make sure the roundtable is also a platform for you to come forward, present your projects, get feedback, get people involved. And then, of course, continued updates from our sister agencies. So as DCASE did today, we expect, of course, them to come back. We expect to hear, again, more from Eric, and I'm sure from the Englewood Arts Collective, as well as from CDOT or from DOH, Department of Housing, or Department of Transportation. We expect those folks to come back as well. Sorry, is there a question? Oh, okay.
I had a question in the chat around I mean, I asked the question, but I'll just say it again. I guess I'm just not understanding why some of the parts of this process is internal at DPD and then others are leaning into the roundtables. So a lot of the RFP, you guys are holding on to the fact that this came from the visioning sessions. And many of us was on that call. I do not remember that. I don't know if this was the breakout sessions where we had all the technical issues. But then as we talk about the role of the corridor manager, which is just as essential as a development at 63rd and Halsted, why isn't the roundtables included in conversations and discussion around that role?
Yeah, and I can take that second question. We are trying to have conversations with many of you on the call, including you, Aisha. I know we've had the mayor's office talk to not only the aldermen, but many stakeholders on this call. There's a sensitive issue here that we're trying to address. Listen, and I understand your frustration. My goal is to have this resolved again before the end of the first quarter. But again, a lot of the decision making is above something that I have control over, but we're certainly trying to influence. So, but I understand your frustration. Yes, this is a critical role. I'm so happy that the alderman stepped up and offered a council that go ahead and assist in terms of us keeping it moving, if you will. We need to make sure that we do not lose time in terms of this work. As you can tell, there's a lot of work to do, and we want to make sure that we double down in terms of making sure that work gets done. But a corridor manager would make that easier. And so we're working extremely hard to get this resolved so we can continue to move forward.
I guess I'm just not understanding why the process with DCASE, with the RFP and everything else has been somewhat inclusive, or at least some type of conversations or discussions. I sat on a selection process with some of the things with DCASE, some of the other residents had input on those. And I guess it just seems a little you know, kind of secretive that this particular role, which is very crucial to the future of our community, is kind of being selected in a vacuum, you know, like it's being made in a vacuum. And I don't want to belabor the point because we had a lot of discussion about it, and I know it's difficult. I'm seeing other models that DPD did or other agencies or departments did that seem to work out really well. And I guess I'm just not understanding why this particular role is a similar process is not in place for it.
Yeah, it's confusing. I think we have a different set of circumstances. You know, and again, I wish I had more answers for you. If we had some easy answers, we wouldn't be in this situation. But I can tell you that every effort is being made to get to some resolution. It's, you know, it's frustrating. I get it. We're frustrated on our end as well. But we are going to come to some conclusion, and hopefully very, very soon.
Hey, Jim, Derek Warren, Great Englewood CDC. Hope all is well. Just in regards to that, I know that our last roundtable, you specifically had posed, or someone made the suggestion of the two organizations presenting, and you had agreed and said that that would be the next step. However, that was not the case. And so with these internal conversations that you all are having, is that still on the table? And if so, when will that take place? And I only ask because as the executive director of Great Englewood CDC, you know, our organization was on your slide deck. So I just want to ensure that we are prepared and ready once that time comes. We were ready prior to, but that did not happen. It seemed to be a pivot. And so just wanting to know, is that still being fleshed out in the internal conversations, or is that going to be made more explicit? And if so, at what time?
Yeah, and we hope to be more clear as we get more clarity, Derek. But to your point, you know, again, we believe both candidates, I certainly do, that both candidates are viable candidates for the role. I think it would be productive to hear the vision of both organizations. And, you know, with the RFPs being part of the process right now, I'm not sure how we get all that in. But that being said, the issues that we're resolving isn't necessarily around that visioning. There's other sensitive issues that we're dealing with that we need to address first. Once we get those issues addressed, I think circling back to that suggestion makes a lot of sense.
And thank you. And I do feel it's important for this roundtable to know, you know, since, you know, DPD and everyone on this call has stated they wanted to be very transparent. So I think it's very important to know and to let everyone on this roundtable know that Liz, who DPD did hire to do the investigative work for this particular role, that Greater Englewood Community Development Corporation was selected by Liz for this role. And so I think that's very important to share because the way it's being presented is if there's still conversation about it and that maybe listening, you know, everybody's still trying to see what is the best fit. But I just think that's a pertinent note to share it from being very transparent that Liz did select Greater Englewood Community Development Corporation for the corridor manager role.
Yeah, and I thought that was clear, but yes, that certainly is the case. Yes, it is.
So what's the holdup?
We still have conversations we need to do internally, Alderman. Happy to circle back with you.
That's not what y'all told us. I had a conversation with you and Maurice Cox, and that's not what y'all told me.
Things have changed.
What changed? Because that's not what y'all told me. So like the community, I said I wasn't gonna say nothing. At the end of the day, y'all need to be honest with us and say what it is, why y'all won't allow them to be this corridor manager. Does this have anything to do with the brewery? Because that's what I feel like it is. And if Stephanie Coleman was okay with this, why didn't you all just take her advice and say, I'm fine with this? Y'all playing with the community's time and mine, to be honest. Like, be honest and transparent, and y'all not doing that. These people ask the same questions every time, and y'all float around the answer. Just be honest. That's something the city ain't good at doing, being transparent. I asked you and Maurice Cox, would you have the two Englewood groups work together? And you all told us Derek said no. But according to Derek, who is right on the call, he's saying something totally different. So this is problematic. And this is why y'all can't never get people to come to the table and give y'all all the honesty and put their 100% selves into it, because y'all ain't truthful.
And can I share it? Because I want to ensure Alderman Taylor and with this roundtable that everyone is aware, and especially as far as Greater Englewood Community Development Corporation stands. We did apply for the corridor manager. We were selected by list and did have the support of community stakeholders as well as Alderman Coleman. And the issue, Alderman Taylor, and as far as others, as we move into this situation, if it seems very simple that if the organization that
why wouldn't you?
Someone's going, okay, the organization that was hired and paid $20,000 for to help vet the corridor manager, if they were brought to the attention, they should be selected. However, we were put in the situation that we were trying to be forced to enter into a forced partnership, and that's just not was not acceptable to the CDC, particularly when there are other corridors who did not have to be in a forced partnership, and that list suggested as corridor manager and DPD embrace. And so, Alderman Taylor, to your point, there is, from my lens, and it's very sad and frustrating when you have been selected, but people have, particularly deputy mayors, have their own vendetta and own issues that are disseminating to their team to try to stall what has already been selected. And so it impacts the community. And you're right, Alderman Taylor, it generates distrust, and it's quite concerning for me.
And it's quite concerning for the chamber, because I think what we're hearing is two different answers being told to two different sets of organizations. And honestly, it's impacting partnership, and that's not fair to either of our organizations. We have been great partners, we're still good partners. And I just feel like we're both organizations are being played as pawns at this point. So it's just a sad situation that we just don't have any clarity, and that this situation, whatever the determination, has not been stated to this point. We are in December.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Derek.
And to echo that, and you're right, I think I'm, for those who do know me, I'm very upfront, I'm gonna be transparent. And so as I shared it with the deputy mayor, as I shared it with Commissioner Cox, as I shared it with Jim, I'm quite concerned with the direction this has gone into. And so in regards to if there's, sadly, there's a lot of misinformation being disseminated, particularly by the deputy mayor. And I will say that and share that, and it's unfortunate. And so my concern is if an organization has been selected by someone that you have brought on and paid to vet for this process, then Alderman Taylor, your question is very, very important, and it's a very poignant one. Then why haven't they been placed in that role? And so that's a question that I believe that the deputy mayor needs to be called upon and asked why that is not the case.
Okay, well, just for the record, a partnership never left the table, just for the record.
Say that one more time, Jim, so I can.
A partnership has never left the table. A partnership.
Can you flesh that out more? What do you mean by that?
A partnership between the Greater Englewood CDC and between the Greater Englewood Chamber of Commerce. Problem solved.
No, that's so let me go back. And so I'm glad this discussion is having that, because I think a lot of people have received misinformation. And so that's not problem solved, Jim. And as I shared with you personally, as I shared with Deputy Mayor Samir, as well as Commissioner Cox, Great Englewood CDC applied for this role as well as the chamber had applied for it. And so if there is a partnership, many of these steps need to be taken prior to the submission of that application, which was not the case. We both applied separately. So as the process goes on, Greater Englewood CDC, we maintain our application that was submitted. And so what you stated and what DPD stated is that even though we talked to Megan Hart, we talked to Carolyn, and Liz clearly suggested and recommended that Greater Englewood Community Development Corporation be the corridor manager for Englewood. The deputy mayor stated that the only way that he would allow that is if there is a forced partnership between Greater Englewood CDC as well as the chamber. And I use force because they said if we don't do that, then you're not going to be able to be it. And so that particular mandate was not made to any other corridor. It was not made to any other community organization. And so it's not problem solved, Jim, that, partnerships don't happen forced. You can't after the fact say, well, this is the only way that you're going to be able to have this particular role or relationship is if you do it this way. And so it was really like, we were being gangstered and in a corner to say, hey, if you don't do it our way, you're not going to do it. And so to your point, Alderman Taylor, what was brought up is completely frivolous, ridiculous, and I'm sure I can think of many other adjectives to describe, because Englewood Brews did not get created in Englewood, which is completely ridiculous. And those who are close to that matter clearly understand that Greater Englewood CDC did everything legally as well as morally to ensure that, number one, we could help the brewery, but yet they circumvented many of the legal aspects of the lease. And so we did what we needed to do that was best for the community to say, no, this is not going to be the best deal. And so but really that has nothing to do with the corridor manager. And so it shows the type of mindset that the deputy mayor has, is that you're going back to something that has nothing to do with the corridor manager for Englewood and bringing that up lets me know, number one, that this process is flawed. It generates distrust, and it's completely baffling to me because you're bringing up issues that have nothing to do with. And again, so to your point, Jim, I completely disagree with what you're saying. It's not that problem solved. If you paid 20 grand to list and they selected us and we got the community stakeholders as well as the alderman, who is the alderman of the 16th ward, where most of the development is developing, and they have selected Greater Englewood CDC, then your question is mute, because that's just really not the case. And so the question still remains in mind, to Alderman Taylor's point, why hasn't a corridor, and as well as those on this call, why hasn't a corridor manager been in place? And so I think to Felicia's point, to your point, yeah, there's so many stories going around. And I think that it's time out for that. So either we discuss it now and we deal with it and we move on, but all of this, situation, I know the story. And Jim, you know the story. Maurice Cox knows the story. Deputy Mayor Samir knows the story. And so it's time out for the sidebar conversations and to say what it is. It is. So to all these internal, to Asia's point, these sensitive conversations that you're having, Jim, I'm still confused on that. That really doesn't, I'm still perplexed on what you're referring to that. And I'll pause there.
Yeah, I have nothing further to add to that, Derek. We're all perplexed, and it's extremely frustrating to deal with this matter. But we're going to solve it. And in the meantime, we're going to keep things moving. This issue is not going to stop the forward momentum that this community is experiencing. It's not going to happen. We're going to keep moving, and we'll solve this. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, even though it might seem a little clumsy, but we're going to get through it.
Great. Thank you, Jim, and thank you to everyone who chimed in on that. I do know we're over our time here, so I'll just wrap up by saying, and I think this will somewhat address some questions about the results of the prior visioning. Online file sharing, I know that's come up on multiple calls. So come January, we will be launching an online platform, TBD, if that's Dropbox, Google Drive, we'll figure out what makes the most sense, that allows us to share and keep posted all previous presentations, as well as other items, maybe past plans, announcements, and find a way as well. We know many of you on the call may have things you want to add and share with folks on this roundtable. So we want to be able to support that. I think by us taking some time also in January before we hear from the developers to just do a review of those visioning sessions, what was shared, what was in the past plans, because again, the visioning sessions were derived from the past plans as well. Just to review all of that, keep that front of mind. But by all means, this is our continued time to have those discussions. And so we've heard from folks that, you know, priorities may have changed from when we submitted that RFP. And so we want these roundtable discussions, the ones in January where we actually hear from the developers, to continue to tweak the RFP and the, not just the RFP, but the proposals. We want to know, well, that may have been in the RFP, but we really think now we're excited about, you know, this particular part of a proposal. We want to hear all of that. And so more to come on that, but we do want to provide a platform to share prior projects and prior presentations. So again, in January, we'll come back. Again, it'll probably be 2 sessions. We'll firm up those dates. We'll firm up what that looks like. We'll have responses. RFP winner would be selected in February, and we would come back in the February session to share that with you all. But again, none of these things are a kind of a final point. All of these are starting points for the next phase. So even when a developer is selected, it doesn't mean the project you saw on the screen is the end all be all of what gets built. There's additional negotiation, additional engagement that would happen. And so more to come on that. So with that, I do want to thank everyone for joining us. Apologies for going a little over today, but thank you so much for staying on. And again, any comments that were in the chat that we didn't get to today, we'll be sure to reach out to folks. So look for an invite for our January sessions, and everybody have a safe and happy holiday. And thank you again for being part of this process.